So thank you for joining us today's event. Before we begin, of course, I want to acknowledge that wherever you are today, wherever you're meeting, you're on the land of the First Nations peoples. This was land that was never ceded. So I'm on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, which also happens to be the land that our university is built on. So I want to pay particular respect to elders of the Gadigal people as traditional custodians of knowledge for the area where we're on today. I also want to pay respect to traditional owners at where all you are. And what we've been doing actually is, if you want to put in the chat the land that you are currently on, please do so. It's a really nice way to see where we all are in these times. So if this is a UTS facing event, so hopefully most of you know me. My name's Verity Firth. I'm the Executive Director of Social Justice here at UTS, and I also lead up our Centre for Social Justice and Inclusion. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Thanks particularly to our distinguished guests from the James Martin Institute for Public Policy. They'll be presenting to you shortly. But before they do, I want to welcome Professor Kate McGrath, our Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Research here at UTS, who's going to set the scene a bit and give you and open this discussion today.
Excellent, thanks so much, Verity. I'm on the land of the Gadigal people, so my voice joins the voice of Verity's and others in acknowledging where I'm meeting with you from today. So all of you should know me as the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Research here at UTS. And I guess I don't think there's many things that I'm quite as enthusiastic as this particular project, which has been something that we have been exploring as a university for a really, really long time. So it's just awesome to be able to host Libby and Buffer today. And I'm sure the session will be really, really great. And the reason that I'm so excited about this is because when I interact with a lot of people around the university, one of the things that they are really wanting to be able to do and learn how to do better is to interact with government and to be able to understand the way in which public policy development happens and to ensure that they are enabling their research to be able to be utilised and taken up in that way, but also to be informed by the big things in policy that the government are wanting to push forward and really develop. But they don't necessarily know how to do that really well. And we have, of course, the Institute of Public IPPG, which are Public Policy and Government, which sits in my portfolio, and they have a lot of capability in this area, but being able to enact that and spread it out across the university has been a critical part. And of course, we have a particular discipline focus. So the fact that when we were creating this opportunity and exploring it, that we could partner with the University of Sydney and Western Sydney University as well, gave us that complementarity and that credibility and that ability to really hopefully be able to work well with the New South Wales government to be able to deliver on our ambitions and on their ambitions in a collective, concerted and very, very thoughtful way of doing that. So I just think it's a great opportunity. As you know, under our research strategy, the pathways to impact are a foundational element of our new research strategy that was finalised at the beginning of last year, and COVID's derailed a few things, but that pathway to impact is now, of course, foundationally one of the 5 focus areas under UTS 2027, starting our new 3-year cycle from next year. So we see the James Martin Institute for Public Policy and the work that we can do with both Libby in the lead as the CEO of the Institute, and Baffa, who's come on board and you'll hear from today as well, as just being really important people in a partnership with us to help us explore one of the critical pathways to impact, which is with government. So I apologise that I'm unable to stay with us for the whole session today. Myself and Attila have got some stuff that we've got to do with our ethics team. Which is equally as important, because of course, foundationally, if we don't have great ethics and integrity, our research doesn't have that strength of basis for which to build confidence. But this is just so important. It's so important because it's really critical for us as a public university. It's so important because we have a social justice context for us as a university. And it's so important because I know how deeply wedded many of our researchers are to being able to position and think about their research, both in terms of how they formulate their research, but also advance their research into this framework. So I just really want to say, yay, it is so exciting to get this really happening. It is awesome. We have 70 people on this webinar right now. And I just am so looking forward to being able to see what we can create out of it. And I welcome this opportunity. And I wish we were doing it together, but you know, in another couple of weeks, people will be free. So welcome to Libby and to Vafa, and I hope that it goes really well, and I'll hang around for another 10 minutes or so.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that, Kate. That's a great introduction. And as Kate's pointed out, the James Martin Institute is a collaboration. It's a partnership between the New South Wales Government and 3 universities, UTS, Sydney University and Western Sydney. And the New South Wales Government gave a $10 million endowment, basically to kick it off and get it running. And the universities have also provided significant cash and in-kind contribution, all with the goal of creating something pretty special and unique, where researchers and public policy practitioners work together alongside each other. So it's really exciting. And I'm going to hand over in a second to the CEO, Libby Hackett, and Vafa, and Vafa Ghazavi, who Kate's already introduced. But what I also wanted to just explain why on earth I'm chairing this. I'm on the board of the Institute, and I'm actually there thanks to Kate McGrath, because so each university gets a representative to sit on the board. We're the members of the organisation that is the Institute, and Kate nominated me, for which I'm eternally grateful. And so I'm on the board, but we also have other people at the university who are key contacts, for want of a better word. The first person who is actually a key contact, her role is key contact at the university, is Jo Tilley. Like a number of you may already know Jo Tilley. She's already posted in the chat. She's the Research and Practice Development Manager at CSJI. She can be found in the system, Jo Tilley, and she's the key contact who often will be doing some of the sort of management of, oh my gosh, this project's coming up. This academic should really connect with that project. So she's a good person to get to know if you're interested in working with the James Martin Institute. The other 3 people in our community that are going to be critical in terms of getting this to work is, as Libby will explain, there are different streams of work in relation to James Martin, which she will take you through. And we nominate research stream leads out of our 3 institutions to assist the Institute in managing this. The 3 from UTS, the 3 stream leads from UTS, are Carol Mills, who everyone knows, who heads up the IPPG and has obviously got long history in public sector employment. She's the policy and project stream lead. She's sharing that role with Stuart White, who probably everyone knows as well, the Director of Institute of Sustainable Futures. And what's great about that is they're both already really playing in that space of the intersection of research and policy. So they're the stream leads from UTS. And we also have Professor Deborah Anderson, who's our engagement and communication stream lead. She's newly announced Dean of Health, for those of you who are not up to date on that. And she's also got a very distinguished international reputation in terms of women's health research. Again, that linking between research and public policy outcomes. So you also should get to know them. But in a very key operational sense, Jo Tilley is mostly going to be your go-to woman. But I'm now going to hand over to Libby, who I think is going to give you an introduction to the Institute and how it works. And then, as I said, and then Vafa, you're speaking too, aren't you?
Yeah,
And then
yeah. I'll just go into a little bit more detail, but not much.
Okay, and then it's absolutely open to questions. And as I said, go into the Q&A and we'll have a really good chat and get all your questions answered. So over to you, Libby.
Thank you, Verity, and thank you, Kate, for such warm welcome and introductions. And hello to everybody who is watching. We're delighted to meet you through this forum. Wish it was in person, but still, we're delighted to meet you. As mentioned, the purpose of today is really just to provide a bit more information about the Institute and explore why and how you might get involved further. And thank you in advance for your potential interest in doing so. We're really excited by that. Now, of course, there is a lot of shared interest and a huge amount of expertise and experience of engaging effectively with government in this room amongst UTS already, and I want to acknowledge that. We're all we are learning as we go as an institute. I've been doing this for over 20 years, trying to bring government and universities together to work on public policy, but I'm still learning. So we're all trying to do this better and find ways of doing this better. So I just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of existing expertise in this room already. I'm going to pause and ask Fiona to play a short video introducing us, and then I'll pop back on after that. Thank you.
Our society continues to evolve, becoming increasingly complex as it grows. Public policy making is adapting to keep step with this complexity. Introducing the James Martin Institute for Public Policy, a groundbreaking government-university partnership that is transforming how public policy is made. As an independent, research-led institute, our unique approach builds on a close partnership with government to bring academic experts into the early stages of policymaking. By creating a trusted environment, we can enable the contestability of ideas and neutralise vested interests. Our process of smart collaboration makes the James Martin Institute unique. Working in bespoke teams, we facilitate collaboration between government, universities, communities, and industry to maximise access to expert knowledge. By focusing on a specific challenge from the start, teams can both co-design and co-deliver relevant policy solutions that are ready for the real world. This also ensures a diverse range of voices and experiences come together to represent broad segments of society. It's about transforming public policy through smart collaborations that harness world-leading research. Find out more at jmi.org.au.
Thank you, colleagues. So that's just a short intro to hear a little bit about us, but let me get into the detail of that. So Fiona, if I could ask you to jump onto that next slide. Thank you. So this is just a short run through of what we'll be talking about today. Thank you, Fiona, that's perfect. So I'll start by telling you a little bit more about the Institute, about James Martin Institute for Public Policy. I'll talk you through our story, our model, and our 3 research streams that Verity's already referenced. And then I'll hand over to my colleague, Dr. Vafa Ghazavi, who is our Executive Director, Research and Policy at the Institute. And Vafa will talk you through the sort of the why and the how of how to engage with us, and then who you might contact to do so. So thank you. Next slide, Fiona, thank you. So really, this is just to say welcome to the James Martin Institute. I think it always helps to understand a sort of origin story of something like an institute to give you the context and the understanding of where we've come from. So my best understanding of this is that this idea came originally from a group of ministers in the New South Wales government. They were discussing the need for a high quality independent public policy institute for New South Wales to provide rigorous evidence-based advice into government. There were many individual examples that they could point to of where this had worked well, and I'm sure each of you could identify individual examples of where you've been involved and it's worked really well. However, they felt that there was a gap in the market for an independent and enduring public policy institute for New South Wales to provide frank and fearless advice back into government. In exploring this, they were cognizant of the quality of our universities in New South Wales and the academic research capability that we have here. And so they decided to establish this competitive process whereby they asked groups of universities to come together across New South Wales and partner with them to set up this institute exactly as Verity described. So UTS, the University of Sydney, and Western Sydney University were successful in their joint bid to partner with the New South Wales State Government on this groundbreaking venture. And if you look to the top right of the slide, you'll see the sort of brief sort of timeline. It was announced in December 2019, and the funding, as described by Verity, was an original endowment from government that was then matched in kind and in cash terms by our member universities over 5 years. So we have some funds to get us going, which is fantastic. In March 2021, the Institute was successfully incorporated. And then in July, actually the 2nd of August, but we'll go with July. July, the James Martin Institute was publicly launched. Our website was officially launched. And then late August, we delivered our first project to the New South Wales Government. So starting to feel like we're actually off the ground and running. Next slide, please, Fiona, thank you. So in terms of just understanding the model, there are many types of institutes and think tanks out there. How do we operate? The government had a particular model in mind. They wanted this to be really distinctive. And exactly the reason that Kate and others are so enthusiastic about this model is this distinctiveness. Many of you will be familiar with a more research-led model. So looking on that top left-hand side, a research-led model where essentially the approach is driven by the quality of the idea or set of recommendations. And essentially that brilliant idea is then taken to government to try and influence or impact on public policy. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. It needs to happen, but there are many mechanisms that exist already, including within UTS, to support that, enable that to happen, and we're not here to duplicate those mechanisms. The opposite end of the spectrum on the far right-hand side is the government-led model. Now, again, people will be familiar with this because often government have an existing mapped out policy pathway that they're following, and they will come out to researchers or consultants or whoever to fill a particular gap in terms of evidence or information. Again, I don't wish to criticize that. That works for government and it works for many, but again, we're not here to duplicate that. We largely will not be responding to RFQs for government, and we're certainly not a sort of pro bono consultancy firm for the New South Wales Government. So therefore, what are we? If we're not research-led, we're not government-led, what are we? Well, the idea was to be a sort of hybrid model in the middle, this idea of a partnership model, that we would create a neutral space through which to bring academics together with policymakers and other experts to tackle complex public policy problems in joint teams, which is really quite a radical and novel idea, but this is what we're trying to do. So unlike other think tanks and policy institutes, we will not have policy program directors on our team, on our staff in the institute. So VAFA's not a health director or an education director. We are all public policy experts in our own rights, please be assured of that, but we are here as process experts, essentially. We're doing that job at JMI of knowledge brokering, essentially, between government and academic experts. Our job is to bring diverse groups of experts together to tackle complicated problems that are a priority for our government, for New South Wales Government. Next slide, please, Fiona, thank you. So I won't read this, you can read this yourself, but this is just a brief capture of our vision, mission, purpose. You'll see in our vision that we are hoping that you've got to have a bold vision, right? And our bold vision is that all public policy would be informed by world-leading research. It's a pretty bold vision. Our purpose, far right, is that we are here to help government. The government are a full partner of ours, and we are here to help government. And therefore, we will tend to start with government in terms of identifying problems or challenges. That's quite an important part of our process and how we're working. That close partnership with government and with our university members is really critical to us. And then bottom middle are values: independence, academic excellence, boldness, pragmatism, optimism. Probably doesn't sound very radical, anything in there, but things that you would wish to see. I'll quickly hover on independence. We are, having been incorporated, we are fully independent in theory from all of our partners, from government and from even our university members. However, I would say we are independent of them, but we are both also dependent on them. We are fully dependent on these partnerships. Without government partnership, we would run the risk of being irrelevant, and our ideas might just sit on a shelf and be interesting but not implemented. And without our university members, we essentially have no expertise to offer. We have no content, and we are dependent on your expertise and your research capability to have a positive impact on public policy. And we are very conscious of that. So thank you, colleagues. Next slide, please, Fiona. So this diagram on the right-hand side is the simple illustration of something that is really quite radical and challenging in terms of our methodology. We are trying to forge these joint teams and bring diverse groups of experts together to work collaboratively on specific issues. Vafa will explain this further, but I just wanted to reassure colleagues that we have no expectation that senior academics would have the capacity or willingness to drop everything and join a JMI project team for 3 months or 6 months or however long it is. I mean, this is not a fantasy world that any of us live in. But we have identified an approach that is working well so far that allows senior academics and experts to join an expert advisory group on our projects that advises then and helps steer a mixed project team, a joint project team. I'll let Vafa explain that further, but essentially it's working pretty well so far. We hope to try and continue practicing that approach. Next slide, please, Fiona. Thank you. So what do we actually do? How do we function? Verity mentioned those 3 streams. So our funding is there on the left-hand side, the inputs, and then our process, we operate through 3 main research streams, and they're listed there. But it's a grant stream. So there will be an annual JMI or James Martin Institute grant that is announced each year. Vafa will talk about this further, but essentially it is to fund new research, new academic research with a public policy focus, and there will be themes each year, etc. The second stream is our regular project stream, our sort of policy and project stream. As mentioned previously, these projects will be ongoing. These are very much about applied knowledge and research. I mentioned 3 to 6 months. You know, we're constrained in all sorts of ways, but this is predominantly about the translation of existing research and expertise to a specific challenge, specific problem. The third stream is communications and engagement, which Deborah mentioned. Sorry, Verity mentioned that Deborah Anderson is supporting us with. The comms and engagement stream I'm really excited about. It is our chance to get that voice of the Institute out to a really wide range of audiences, but also it's our ears as well. So our ability to listen and to bring a really wide range of voices and opinions, perspectives, evidence into our projects and into our work more broadly. And then, of course, the output on the far right should, in theory, be highly practical policy solutions and improved outcomes for the people of New South Wales. So that's the aim of what we're trying to do here. Next slide, please. Thank you, Fiona. So this is my last slide before I hand over to Vafa. Thank you, Kate. Thank you so much. Lovely to see you. Take care. Thank you. This is my last slide before I hand over to Vafa. This just gives you a quick view of our organizational structure and our partners there at the bottom. No surprises. You can see the James Martin Institute there in orange, and we have an independent board. As Verity mentioned, the 7 members on our board include our 3 university members represented on our boards, of which Verity is, of course, one. What I wanted to flag was the light blue boxes around the edge, those who are supporting us in very real and very practical ways from our university members. And Verity's mentioned some of these already, but if you go on the left-hand side, look at the research stream leads. Our stream leads are so important to us. I've mentioned those 3 streams. These stream leads come in and help lead each of those 3 streams, the grants, the projects, the communications, and working with us to do that a day a week, which is just phenomenal and a real added value to the model that we've been able to put up. So Professor Deborah Anderson, Professor Stuart White, and Carol Mills, all coming in as stream leads from UTS, and we're deeply thankful. Verity mentioned the wonderful Joe Tilley, of course, who on the right-hand side, you'll see that blue box, University Key Contacts. Joe, as Verity mentioned, helps us to navigate the university and identify and engage experts on a project-by-project basis. And Joe, we are deeply thankful. Thank you so much. And then, of course, there's the research advisory group as well. So that light blue on the left-hand side, it's part of our rigor and our independence that we have a slightly arm's length and separate research advisory group that advise us. and on that is made up of various individuals and experts, but that includes Associate Professor Myra Hamilton, also at the Institute of Sustainable Futures, working with Stuart, and we also benefit from the public policy expertise of the wonderful Peter Lee from the Institute of Public Policy and Governance as well. So we're really thankful for all of these colleagues. And I really wanted to show that to you to demonstrate how active and how engaged this partnership is with UTS already. Before I hand over to Vafa, who will explain more about why and how you might engage with us as an institute. Thank you so much, colleagues.
Well, it's a pleasure to join you all, and I just wanted to go into a little bit more detail, but really just to build on the excellent comments from everyone so far. That's really, I think, already given a really good picture of what we're trying to do, and how I think already it's fairly clear how there are many openings for academic researchers such as yourselves to get involved. And just to say, as Libby said, we're on a learning journey where we're building these models. It's a sort of, we're trying to create new pathways and frontiers through our models for your engagement with the policymaking process. So just to say, there's a kind of openness and an active interest in trying to figure out what works. But in terms of where we are right now, the way we would sort of suggest that there is clear value in your participation, one way to break it down is through the 6 points here. You can read them on the slide, but just to say that this is really an opportunity to apply your research in a public policy context and to address big public policy challenges. We see the Institute as providing mechanisms to demonstrate impact and to translate your ongoing research for public good, and to be able to demonstrate that. We see the model that's being described already as really quite innovative, and therefore an opportunity to participate in big problem solving with government and other stakeholders in a way that might be quite radically new and quite genuinely exciting to be part of. And I'll get a bit more into that in a second. Of course, as the Institute already has a certain standing, given the way it was created and its kind of profile, but as the Institute grows in its kind of recognition, we see it as an opportunity for academic researchers to use the Institute as a platform to gain recognition for your work that is relevant to the Institute's goals, if you like. Through the models that we're building, it obviously means that we're providing openings for academics to access government and other stakeholders in business and the community more widely, in ways that just may not have existed or been possible previously. And I'll get to the funding point in a minute, which I'm sure there'll be great interest. But just to say, as a sort of general point here, is that really we're trying to unlock the capability that already exists, and to try and help create a pathway for academic research to make an impact through public policy. Of course, there are many ways that research contributes to the public good in general, but on this specific question of how to do that through better policy making, as Kate already described, there can be many blockages, there can be many barriers, and we're trying to find a way to sort of break through those. And just on this, I think it's really important to acknowledge that there's a spectrum of academic experience and capability in terms of engaging with government. And we're interested in everyone who's never engaged with government through to people who have deep experience working with government. For example, if you're an anthropologist who spent the last 20 years working on homelessness, but you've never had an opportunity to engage in a policy process, will help facilitate and bring you into this journey to help, for example, if there was a homelessness policy on housing or homelessness, then we would want to harness that. But you might be at the other end of the spectrum. You may have had many consulting opportunities, many policy relevant research outputs. And so that would be obviously of great interest to us as well. So we're going to try and build that capability and find a way to harness different levels of experience in that regard. Okay, just to go to the next slide, just to get a little bit into the nuts and bolts to whet your appetite. On the research grants, which hasn't been discussed as much so far, obviously this will be of great interest to our academic research communities. And just I want to say upfront, probably the most important thing is that we want this to be a very user-friendly, low bureaucracy, very streamlined process. We don't want to take people's energy and time away from the important work they're doing. We want to help empower that to reach policymakers and to break new ground on solving big public problems. So there's going to be as streamlined as we can make it, and we'll hopefully do that as we will improve, I'm sure, over time, but we're going to do as much as we can right from the get-go to ensure that. Just to say that in around March, end of March, there will be an announcement on this. It will start in the first year of a total bucket of $500,000 and working up towards $1 million in future years. We will identify themes. We are currently working out exactly what sort of parameters will be involved in the grant process. For example, what thresholds of funding will be available. But just to say, we're interested in a range of levels, early career, more advanced. We're interested in all disciplines. And in fact, we'd be particularly interested in interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary teams applying across departments, given that many public policy challenges today require that kind of interdisciplinary approach. There will be a preference for match funding, for instance. And just the overarching point that the key criteria here will be the relationship between the groundbreaking research and its ability to make a difference through public policy impact. But we will help guide applicants and help ensure that they are assisted to be able to articulate where that value can be found through their work. And also, one of the, I think, very big advantages of the Institute's grant stream is that at the other end, we will help with the translation work to get any research that's done to be fit for purpose for policymakers. And so that shouldn't be a deterrent to getting involved. We will be part of that process and really assisting to be able to ensure that public policy impact is maximized at the other end. And so alongside any, for example, more traditional academic outputs, we would be interested in working with any grant recipients on that piece of engagement work. So I'm sure you may have questions, which we're happy to field in a minute. Just on the projects, just to go a little bit more in the nuts and bolts to describe how this works in practice. So the team would consist of Institute staff and relevant people from government, the core team that's delivering a project, as well as a junior researcher who would be critical in the synthesizing and utilization of existing academic research. But as Libby said, we needed to find a way to get more senior researchers involved while recognizing the limitations on their time. And so we've built a model where we will have expert advisory groups that will include senior academics, and they will provide a kind of critical function supporting the core project team by giving them strategic direction, by helping them see new avenues for pursuing different angles on a problem that the team might not have considered, by opening up new, for example, case studies or material that should be covered that hasn't been, and I could go on. But the point is that they would have a kind of active strategic support kind of role in the process, and that's a way to bring in more senior academic expertise. We would manage the recruitment of the lead researcher, and we will really be we're really going to be investing a lot in iterating and trying to get this model working well, that can really bring together the different elements of the process to think about how to tackle big public policy problems. And so our expertise will be around curating that process, managing that process, trying to facilitate as much productive interaction as we can throughout the process. The projects would normally go for around 3 to 6 months. We're not sort of dogmatic about the timelines. It would be tailored to the project itself. Libby's already made the point about government as the importance of having government sort of buy-in. That would be partly through consultations to figure out what sort of priorities to focus on. But if you think about the model itself, it actually builds in the government buy-in, because government is giving people to be part of the team. Senior officials will be part of the expert advisory group. And so it's really baked into the process, the partnership and the intensive collaboration. So right through from the conception of what to work on through to how it's delivered, that's really crucial to where we think we're going to add value. And just to say, there is a sort of third bucket of activity where we're going to be working with academic researchers intensively, and that's what will look more like, in some ways, more traditional type policy relevant outputs, but we will be working on the format for those, to make sure that we're not duplicating existing venues for policy relevant publications, and where you will no doubt hear more about that. But suffice to say that there will be a platform for thinking about short pieces of policy policy relevant work, and we will be providing a venue that can both help highlight that work, but also ensure that it's sort of consumable and relevant to the policy making community. And another aspect of what we are working on is to think about situations where government may benefit from academic expertise, but there is a full project would not be suitable, and it may be more suitable to more directly connect academics and policymakers, and we're calling this a rapid response mechanism. It could be simply connecting academics with government, or through to things like one-day workshops where we bring together the relevant stakeholders. So obviously we're looking for your participation across the range, and there'll be many opportunities, I'm sure, depending on your area of interest. And we, on that point, just to say, we are sort of agnostic about the policy focus. We will be led by the major priorities of the day and looking ahead. We're not specifying at this stage sort of narrow areas of focus.
Wonderful. Okay, so we've got some questions sitting in the Q&A, and I encourage other colleagues to pop their questions in as well. The first is from Sarah Angus. Her question, I suppose this is to either of you, Libby and Vafa. Can you clarify matched funding? Is that from each university, policy partners, community, or does it draw down on current contributions?
Yes, so when the endowment was given by the New South Wales Government, the 3 founding universities already mentioned, including UTS, matched funded over 5 years. So they matched the level of endowment that the government had put in, part cash, part in kind, but essentially over 5 years, the contribution of our 3 founding members matches the original endowment amount given by the New South Wales State Government. Now, obviously, this is all to get us started, and our job is to think about additional member universities joining, and funding would flow through that, but also other sources of appropriate revenue, through things like events or, all sorts of different ways we can do it, funding for our projects, bearing in mind the importance of independence and non-partisanship, such that we would be very careful who we received funding from for particular projects. But yeah, that matched funding is a starting point, and our job is to gear up from that, use it effectively to bring in additional funds over time.
I wonder if the question was about the research grant stream, where I mentioned.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So, no.
Vafa,
I mean, that was super interesting as well. But why don't we cover both? Why don't we cover both?
I'm sure it was about
both just in
sorry,
case.
You go.
I'm just thinking about our audience. They might be asking about that. So look, I included this point, but preference is an important word here. It's not we're not blocking non-match funding. So that's one point. And the other point is that the match funding could be basically from any appropriate source. So I think it's more about, we're thinking about maximizing public, impact for the public good through public policy. And so, for example, that may be an indicator for us of the context in which you're doing your work. It's not a barrier. There may be situations where that's not sort of a relevant indicator, but just to say, we'd be interested in those sort of, those situations where you may be able to match, or you're working within a bigger funded process.
Yeah, thank you, Vafa. That's a much better answer. Desirable, not essential criteria.
Yeah.
Thanks, Verity. I shall listen more carefully.
The next question was, it wasn't clear, Libby. Don't be sure that wasn't clear. Ian, the next question is from Ian Higgins, and is, again, I'll go to you first, Libby. Will you incorporate using the government white paper process?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, look, it's really fascinating, isn't it? The government has all sorts of formal and informal ways of receiving influence or advice, or the extent to which we would get involved with a white paper process, or even the equivalent of a green paper process. It's in ways it can provide a more formal mechanism, but I guess I would slightly separate us from perhaps a peak body or an advocacy group, or in that we're not excluded from engaging. If they went out for public consultation, of course we could do that. But I guess I would say that, having been in this world for 20 years or more, I believe the more significant influence that you can have tends to be the more informal side of government advice. And often, if you can be involved in the problem definition phase before the white paper goes out on issue X, if you've been involved in helping the minister or senior officials to define that problem, capture, identify, conceptualize that problem in the first place, that's really where the high levels of influence can occur. And our conception of the James Martin Institute is partly about that, opening up that contestability of ideas. Once again, there's a lot of academic literature out there about how that process of contestability of ideas in government has narrowed significantly in the last 20 years or more. And this, because of our close partnership with the government, which is that builds in that trust that we are hoping to maintain with them. We have a kind of a unique access at the moment that allows us to build appropriate influence, but to access, I guess, that early stage thinking, problem definition, problem ideation, and therefore, yes, we can engage with a white paper, but I would see that as a slight failure for us if we haven't been involved pre-white paper. So yeah, I'd put it that way.
That's really interesting. The next question is from Therese Apollonio. Does James Martin Institute have a standing agreement with New South Wales Government regarding access to data? Example, access to cabinet documents or parliamentary archives.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? We do not have a standing agreement. I might hand over to Effa. We've started a project right now where we've got colleagues from DCJ and DPC on the project team. We're literally in those first few weeks of grappling with this issue of data being shared with us through the project team. I don't know if we'll ever have a New South Wales wide agreement, but it would be wonderful because it would stop the problem of having to do it for every single project. But I'm going to hand over to Effa for this one.
Yeah, it's a great question. And so, yes, exactly as Libby said, at the moment, there is no such agreement. But it may be a case where this is actually where we break some new ground. But then, for example, we'll have to, maybe not, perhaps not, as Libby said, across government, but maybe in certain cases, in certain portfolio areas, or with agencies that sort of focus on managing data. But the other aspect of this is that we would help with is that if, for example, data was used in a project, we would create that kind of trusted environment where that could be done, hopefully. And then we would help manage what that means for the output, because it may be that some things are more available in the internally for the team to work on, but government may not. We'd help to work out how that could be presented publicly, and so we could also work on that problem. But just to say, this is an area where I think there's more to be explored and figured out. And so, for example, if you do have very concrete suggestions on this, I think I'd be interested in hearing from you and talking to you, because it's definitely an area where maybe not radically at the beginning, but it's something we can definitely try and find new approaches on.
Alrighty, so there's a next question from Wade Tozer. Super exciting. Are you thinking about future policy issues not currently identified that can be headed off at the pass before they become wicked problems? If so, how are you thinking about achieving that?
Good.
Yeah, Baf has just been writing about that, so I'm going to hand over to him.
Yeah. So really, and Verity can speak on behalf of the board, but this is an issue that we're grappling with at a more fundamental level about, what does it mean to be supporting government to achieve its policy ambitions? And I think there's two ways to basically break that down. It's one of the things that government has already clearly said that it wants to work, problems it's facing, or wants to a policy vision it has on a particular area, in a particular area. But another way to think about it is, what can the Institute do to help government see problems or see issues it may wish to work on, to align with its long-term vision, but it may not be currently as familiar with, either because, for example, it's a long-term structural background issue, challenge. Perhaps it's something that's been being pioneered elsewhere in the world that hasn't gained much traction in Australia yet. It could be that it's just simply something that the conceptual frameworks don't exist yet. People don't know how to describe the problem properly. I mean, I always just use this as a little example, but you can't make sexual assault policy until someone named the problem, identified what's going on as a phenomenon, and then you get the ability to create policy to address it. So that problem identification phase, certainly outside government, there may be things that government would like to hear from researchers. And so we're just thinking about how to make that work. But the critical step that has to be met is there has to be demand from government. So in that sense, we're not like a normal think tank that just because it's something genuinely is a burning issue, that means we will work on it. It has to be a burning issue that government may not have recognized yet, but we'll only work on it once government gives us an indication that it wants to press ahead, because that's our partnership model. That's our value add. We're a deeply collaborative approach. And so we would need to get that buy-in. And then that, as I said before, that's baked into our model. So then government would be willing to participate. So in other words, yes, it could be a new frontier that government hadn't considered, but we would have to take that back to government to get the sort of go ahead, if you like.
That's right, Vafa, and it's actually drawing back into that informal formal distinction of influence, that over time, as we build that trust, as we build respect with government as an institute, that and trust of our processes, that our ability to go back to government and persuade them that this is something that they should be interested in will increase. And so my understanding of this and seeing it in the sort of 5-year horizon that I try and keep on my mind is that in the first instance, we will be more responsive, we will be more directed by current priorities, by the Premier's priority, all those sorts of things. But over time, the ideal is, of course, that we are frontier thinking, driving, innovating, all of those words I shouldn't use, sorry, but that we have sufficient trust and relationship with government that we can start to influence the boundaries of their thinking and use that brilliant academic capability to do exactly that.
So I've got quite a few questions now. People are getting warmed up. So let's try, bearing in mind we've got 6 minutes left.
Short answers.
Let's try to be short and sharp. So Sarah, I'm just going to skip your one because you've already had one, but I'll come back to you. Nivek Thompson asks, how do you understand the relationship between evidence-based policy and ideological positions?
Great. I mean, this is a deep epistemological question. I
love it.
I won't do it justice. Just suffice to say that we have these parameters. We're interested in big problems. We're interested in pragmatic steps government can take, and within that, I hope we can bring people with all sorts of ideological viewpoints into the process. And not that they should park them at the door, but we should find ways to see how that can shed light and generate new ideas in relation to a problem that we're all genuinely trying to tackle together. So part of what the Institute's trying to do would be to sort of not say, not to deny the ideological tension and division, but to find a way to ensure that that is not doesn't become a kind of superficial blockage to people contributing to solving big problems that we all agree as a society are problems. Yeah. So anyway, it's an inadequate answer, but because it's such a hard question. So
my quick 20-second capture is that we're a neutral space, and that allows us to bring in a really diverse range of ideologies and views. It does not mean that we wish to neutralize all of those views as they come into our space. It's the opposite. We are a neutral platform and space for a diverse range of opinions and viewpoints to be heard. Thanks, Verity.
And I notice people are also voting up the questions, which is a good idea now as we begin to run out of time. So Danielle, you've been pushed to the top. Danielle Logue, what is the process for how New South Wales government departments engage with JMI? How is it brokered on the government side? Does it have to go via PMC or Treasury?
Libby, you want to answer? Or?
Do you want me to? Yeah, quickly. So we have we have an ongoing series of government engagement. Short answer, no. We engage directly across all of the government departments, with all of the ministers, with opposition members as well, with government agencies. Now, that's a pretty big ambition. We haven't spoken to all of them yet, but we have an exec alongside VAFA. We have an exec director for engagement coming on board, and part of her role will be to build out this process. So yeah, we talk to people as directly as we can, using existing networks like the Waratah Research Network as well. We're not here to duplicate what already exists, but no, they do not have to come via any signpost or anything. We talk to them directly.
Just to say, we're currently designing a more rigorous process so that as ideas come to us, we can decide how to prioritize. So that's currently what we're working with our board on. But as Libby said, agnostic about where, which department. For example, right now we're working on domestic violence, which is not Treasury, but is connected to a Premier's priority, or, as it was. But the lead, department that's implementing that is not either of the central, So anyway, yeah.
Jane Hall, what about publications? Is there an overarching agreement on publication? What evidence will be there on impact? Thinking about the impact and engagement assessment.
Yeah, fantastic. Vafa, do you want to give that one?
Yeah, I think in terms of evidence, that's a really good question. And Jane, if you want to reach out directly to me on that, I'd be super interested in that. I think in some ways we're designed in a way that's so impact heavy that the evidence is almost like we haven't actually thought about it in that way, because it's kind of like,
we can't do it unless there's impact.
Like the whole thing is kind of the impact. So it's sort of meta answer to your questions. But in terms of overarching agreement on publication, I'm not exactly sure what you mean. But to say that there's a difference between the grants and the projects. So grants will be a mix of traditional outputs that whatever the academic wants to produce, as long as we ensure that we can help work with you on policy relevant outputs as well. And so that's the grant side. On the policy project side, we really want to be led by the nature of the problem and the nature of the government, what it needs to address that problem, whether it's a full-fledged report that becomes public, whether it's a short report, whether it's a presentation to a minister. We want to stay agnostic about the nature of those products. But one thing I should have said about projects is that I expect, and I think we expect, that there will be spillover benefits. If everyone's working on a project together for 3 months, it ideally means that there's new types of relationships, new kinds of networks built, new partnerships, and there could be what I'm calling spillover benefits, where the Institute is no longer steering a partnership, but academic partners may, in a project, may find new avenues, and that might lead to, for example, publications that hadn't been conceived initially. So just to say.
Look, it's 2:00. What we'll do for Sarah and Bruce is we'll send your questions through to Vafa and Libby direct, and they'll just get back to you directly and answer. Fiona, can you put that final slide back up? Because I think the final slide had the contact details.
Thank you, Verity.
Next one.
The one just after this, yeah.
Yeah. There you can see all our pretty faces. There
Beautiful
you go.
faces. Yeah.
So, thank you everyone for joining us. As you can see, it's really genuinely exciting. It's really, I know that I've been really enjoying being on the board. It's wonderful to have this direct relationship with government and to really be able to drive those connections to lead evidence-based public policy. Oh my God, what a holy grail that is. So please get involved, sign up to the newsletter. You can get in contact. Remember Jo Tilley, the name Jo Tilley, she's our key contact at UTS, but also I'm sure Libby and Vafa are more than happy to, I say generously, respond to questions and so
We'd love to. Thank you.
So we'll pass on those final questions to Libby and Vafa and stay in touch, everyone. And we'll also we will develop a bit of an internal comms strategy around JMI opportunities. So everyone who's attended today, everyone is registered. In fact, so 150 people will be automatically on our list of people to inform when things like the grants process opens and so forth. So we'll get that infrastructure at the UTS end as well to support everyone's involvement. So thank you for joining us today. That's the end of the webinar, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you, Verity. Thank you, everybody.